Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Shay. I'm the Camp Director Hiring Manager here at Galileo, and I was also a Camp Director or a Summer Program Director myself for 5 years. I'm joined today by my wonderful associate, Ramaya, as well as several of our Camp Directors who are going to be speaking to you today, but I'll kick it over to Ramaya now so that she can give an introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Ramaya. I'm our recruiting specialist here at Galileo Learning, and I also work at camp as a summer staffer for 2 summers before coming into this role.
Awesome. So we're excited to give you all a glimpse today into the role of the Galileo Camp Director, and also to answer any questions that you might have about the role. We want to, of course, recognize that we have both Galileo summer staff alumni here with us today and folks that are completely new to Galileo. And we welcome every single one of you to this time. You're going to get to sit back and relax wherever you are and really just listen to all of us today chat to you about Galileo. So if we could please welcome our Camp Director panelists. So let's kick it off with Zainab. We'll kick it over to you for an introduction.
Perfect, thanks. Hi everybody, welcome to the panel, or welcome to our session. My name is Zainab, my pronouns are she, her, hers. Last year was my first year as a camp director, and I started as an assistant camp director the year before. I was at our Lafayette site in the East Bay, so very exciting. And if I were to tell you what my favorite CD flare piece would probably be a cape and a tutu. That was like my regalia every single day, and that's how families knew who I was, and they knew to come to the crazy wild outfitted lady when they needed a question answered.
Amazing, thank you. And Matt, we'll take it over to you next.
Hi friends, thanks so much for being here with us tonight. Again, my name is Matt, and my pronouns are he, him. This past summer was my 6th summer as a camp director, and I've been at the Galileo Los Feliz site all 6 summers. Before working at Galileo, I worked at several other camps, including Airhead Ranch Outdoor Science School and a camp called Whale Camp, as well as some background acting. And my favorite piece of camp flair is actually this mermaid tail, which is hard to see. And also, I have a new respect for people that wear like pencil skirts, because it is hard to move.
Amazing. Thank you, Matt. And last but certainly not least, over to you, Tatiana.
Hi, my name is Tatiana Jordan. This was actually my first year as a camp director at Galileo. However, I've been with Galileo since 2016. I started as a Nebula art instructor, and our Nebulies are typically like transitional kindergarten to kindergartners. So I was with the babies originally in Redondo Beach, and then I transferred over to Burbank, and then I ended up at Sherman Oaks with Shay, and I've been there ever since. During the school year, prior to Galileo, I was a school year teacher. I taught kindergarten and 4th grade. Now I am an after school program coordinator and an ELOP activities coordinator. My pronouns are she, her, and I would say that my favorite camp flair is my glitter mermaid legs. You guys know, like the fun glitter that we put on our face. Because my mermaid was Chiquita the mermaid, I would cover my legs in glitter, especially on water day, and make the kids think that I was gonna like turn into a mermaid, and they loved it. They're like, her scales are forming. So I would say the glitter is definitely my favorite camp flair.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for those fun-filled introductions. Can't wait to hear more from you in a bit. But before we do that, I'm going to tell all these fine folks a little bit more about the details of the camp director role. And hopefully by now, folks listening have a sense of the great variety of leadership we have in camp, both in personality, experience, costume preference, and everything in between. So excited to get back to these folks later. Thank you, team. Cool. So I'm going to hop to our next slide here. Who is Galileo Learning? Galileo is an innovation education organization, and of course we specialize in summer day camp programs for kids, specifically incoming K through 6th graders, and then we also have a counselor and leadership training program for incoming 6th through 10th graders. We focus on design thinking, on project-based learning, and on STEAM curriculums, and this summer we have 75 plus campsites that we're going to be either launching or returning to operation in 5 territories. So we operate in the San Francisco Bay Area, in Southern California, in Chicago, in Seattle, and in Denver. And as an important note for those of you listening, you will need to be located in one of those physical locations where camp is taking place to be eligible for the camp director role. Of course, it's important to be where your camp program is. And if you have questions about that, that's something you can follow up with us about later on. We've also received lots of recognition and accolades for the great work that we do, and you can see some of those listed here. Some of Ramaya's important work on our team is keeping up with all of these honors and looking for new opportunities to really showcase the excellence that we do here. And we're really proud of all of the appreciation that we've received for the work that we do and the impact that we have in our communities. And with that, Ramaya, I'll kick it over to you to chat a little bit about our mission.
Thank you, Shay. So it's really our mission. That's what sets us apart as an organization. And our mission is to develop innovators who envision and create a better world. I know this might sound like a little bit lofty, but we really do believe that it can be accomplished in just 1 week of summer programming with the right culture, the curriculum, and the people. Galileo Learning has been around for over 20 years, and we hire about 2,000 staff and serve over 50,000 families every summer. So that translates into incredible impact in our communities. So when you train yourself, whether you're a camper or a summer staffer or even a parent, and you think about how to think like an innovator, it gives you agency in this world. And more than ever, we need these kinds of change makers. It's liberating for individuals, foundational for teams, and essential for 21st century success.
Thank you. So now we're going to talk about what a camp director does exactly. And of course, I expect that some of you will have read our job description, some of you maybe not, and that's totally great. That's why you're here. We're celebrating all forms of engagement with us today. And really, both literally and figuratively, our camp directors wear many hats, as Matt evidenced for us just a moment ago. But here are some of the big pieces that the camp director is primarily responsible for at Galileo. You're going to do things like oversee the overall leadership of your whole camp location. And this includes things like staff management, day-to-day operations, and generally creating a joy-filled camp culture. You mentor and train your staff, and your staff could be anywhere between 10 to 40 people, depending on the size of your site. You're responsible for supporting their professional development and their work experience. A lot of coaching and helping get folks towards their professional goals while they're with you for the summer. You're going to lead your program operation while creating a supportive and a joyful environment, both for your campers, your staff, and your camp families. And you'll be sort of the MC, figurehead, rubber chicken master of your camp community, setting the tone for culture, and also supporting customer service and supporting your families in a really meaningful way. You'll be a problem solver for all things camp management, a general fire putter-outer for any unexpected things that might take place, and be responsible for things like keeping up with supply maintenance, and to make sure that your instructors, facilitators, and anyone else on site has everything that they need to be successful. But of course, there are all kinds of other wonderful things that come along with the role, and you'll hear some more about this when we talk with our camp directors. Really, what is the role really? It's things like showing up first thing in the morning in a tutu or a dinosaur onesie. It's leading your staff in fun, focused meetings and professional development. It's warmly greeting campers and families as they run through the fun machine that we saw at the top of this slide, and really just leading and building community in a really meaningful way. So again, you wear lots of hats as a camp director, and it's all part of what makes the job so dynamic, so rewarding, and so special. Now, Ramaya, over to you to talk a little bit more about exactly what we're looking for in the role.
So you all got to meet some of our camp directors that have worked with us this past season. And our camp directors are people who are intrigued or inspired by our mission and have experience as student-centered leaders in our community. So these are just a high-level overviews of some of the core competencies that we're really looking for in our camp director candidates. You guys can take a look here. I would say that my recruiter tip to you all is ensuring that your resume is tailored to really showcase where you've had past accomplishments and any other forms of professional experience that support some of the criteria that we're looking for here. So I mentioned student-centered leadership. So we're looking for about 3 or more years of K through 12 teaching experience, but we're really looking for that minimum of 1 year of leadership experience. And with all of those things being said, our camp directors come from a wide variety of backgrounds, including but not limited to school teaching, camp counseling, leadership, after-school programming, coaching, museum education, the list really goes on. While this is a very in-depth overview of what we are looking for, we do encourage you to apply, even if you don't necessarily meet every checkbox in the job description, but you think that you have what it takes. We really encourage you to apply. We want to share a little bit of an overview of what we're looking for exactly. Now that we know exactly what we're looking for, that secret sauce of what makes our camp directors so amazing at camp, here's a high-level overview of what that commitment looks like. Starting in this time zone now between September and December, you'll apply for the camp director position, and you'll have the opportunity to interview with our team. What we're looking for is the ability to work between 8 to 12 hours per week in the preseason, so that starts in about January. This is intended to be part-time work that can sit alongside any other academic year, teaching commitments, or any other type of work that you may have. And what we really want to emphasize here is that all of these interlocking factors really point to what makes our camp directors great is this readiness to stick around. We notice that people in this role and their teams benefit from a 3-year commitment. So while this whole annual cycle is exciting, the best thing is really doing it 3 times. And that's what we're hoping to accomplish with our camp director role.
Thank you. So again, as some of you might have seen from our job descriptions, things like compensation and benefits will vary by location, but what you can expect is a hourly rate for your preseason work, and then a salaried rate during the summer, plus the potential for bonus earnings based on your site. And because there is variety across sites, if you do have specific questions about compensation beyond what's listed in the job description, we invite you to send us an email about that directly so we can take a look at the locations that you're looking at and give you the most transparent answer based on the area that you're hoping to work. But also along with our compensation, camp includes some really great benefits, like free enrollment for your kids, if you have kids, or the ability to gift 2 weeks of camp to kids that you love and care about. You also have the opportunity to be transferring skills and building skills and learning as you go, particularly if you're an educator who's looking to transition into more structured leadership. It's a really great opportunity to learn on the job with us, to increase impact in your community, and also to work really specifically towards any professional development goals that you have. In terms of our interview process, CD applications are reviewed in 3 stages. So we have our initial application where you send your resume and a little bit of information about you. That typically takes 10 minutes or less, and our applications are being hosted on Indeed this year, so you'll apply there. If your initial application is successful, you'll move to a screening stage. And this is a one-way video interview where you'll answer a few fun questions, send us that video back, and we'll have a review. If you're successful at the screening stage, you'll then move to a 2-on-1 interview facilitated usually by myself or somebody on our HQ team and a member of our field team, usually the person who might be your potential supervisor. If you're a returning staff member and we already know a lot about you, we'll also take information like your previous camp performance history into account when reviewing your application. But overall, everybody is going through our same interview process. And in our final interview, you can look forward to fun things like role play scenarios, and a variety of different lines of questions about your experience, your background, and what you're hoping to get out of the role. And we do our best to really assess across a lot of different avenues of investigation. So you really have the chance to put your best foot forward and showcase your skills in the best possible way. We have a competency-based approach to hiring at Galileo. And this means that we're really determining the key skills required to be successful in the camp director role, and then looking specifically at how you demonstrate those skills clearly in an interview process. So the great thing about that is that our competencies are one thing, and how you show up is one thing, and the way that everyone might demonstrate those skills themselves as individuals can be different, and that's great. So it's not like there is a right and a wrong way to be a camp director. There are tons of different ways to demonstrate the competencies required to be successful for the camp director role. And we appreciate that, great camp directors come from a variety of backgrounds. And we really invite you to think about how your work experience, maybe outside of the education sector even, might translate into the skills needed to be successful in the CD role. And like Ramaya was saying earlier, even if you're not maybe sure that everything on paper ticks the box, we're really excited to hear from you. And we think of your application process with us at any stage to just be the beginning of a conversation. So even if you are not hired to be a camp director this season, we'll be so excited to welcome you into our orbit, to get to know a little bit more about you, and then to have that information in our back pocket if we have other opportunities that we think might be a good fit. So again, we really want to make sure this is feeling accessible and exciting. And even if it feels like pushing the edges of your comfort zone or stepping outside it completely to apply, we welcome your application regardless. We also aim to communicate with you at every stage in the interview process, and you're always welcome to reach out to us if you have any questions, and that's true regardless of the outcome. And if we decide to send you an offer, you'll be introduced to your manager shortly after that if they were not on your original interview panel, and then you'll begin your journey with us. And like Ramaya stated earlier, that journey will start sort of at the end of January. You'll have an in-person kickoff with us, and then your remote preseason work, and then of course, full-time work in the summer, plus a regional weekend activity at some point in the spring as well. And now we're gonna go ahead and hop over to our camp director panelists so you can hear a little bit more from them. The 3 things that we're gonna hit in this time for our listening friends are: what made you decide to be a camp director? What drew you to Galileo as a company? What were some things that maybe you were a little nervous about when you were starting out? Or what did you initially find challenging about the role, and how did you overcome that challenge? And of course, what's the best part of being a camp director? What makes it worth it? And why should these fine folks pursue a career in camp directing themselves?
I don't think I shared this before, but I was a grad student my first year when I was an assistant camp director. So I was looking for something fun to do over the summer, and I found Galileo, and I had so much fun being an assistant camp director that I never wanted to leave. And so it was my camp director at the time and some other folks who really pushed me and encouraged me to apply for the camp director role. And I did, and I was really excited at this opportunity to become a camp director. I will say, kind of like Shay mentioned, there are some maybe nervous moments, but like it happens. Everyone's nervous, even if you're in your like 5th, 6th year, I can imagine. But I will say that Galileo has such a supportive community, and there is always somebody there to answer your questions. I don't know how many times I called my regional director during this past season, just like blurting information at him because I was like panicked, but he just like calmed me down. We figured it out. We had a solution, and there was always a way to get in contact with somebody. My favorite moments at camp are like the little moments of joy. So as a camp director, you see a lot of like the big picture, like the macro operations of what it takes to build a camp. And so you don't necessarily see the on the ground fun that sometimes happens because you're busy, answering parent phone calls or you're doing something else. So the little moments of joy and the little campy moments make it all worth it for me. A little story, our second to last all camp activity was make your team leader. So your team leader are the adults and staff members that take your campers to their different classes and projects. It was make your team leader a backpack out of random supplies, and that's a pro move because you want to clean up camp and get rid of all the supplies that you can't send back to our warehouse. And our campers were so into it. They had like straws and tape and random pieces of cardboard that they made into a backpack. And then I also got to watch my staff like build a runway and do a runway show showing off their backpacks. And that moment, like it paid off all in that moment because everyone was having fun and they were learning, they were growing. And it just felt like all the work that you had put in came to fruition. I don't know if there's anything more that I can share, but I will pass it off to another camp director.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And I love that backpack idea and wish I was still running camp so I could steal it, because what an excellent way to help clean up supplies. That's fantastic. All right, Matt, we'll kick it over to you.
Like I said before, I had been like working in the camp world for about 4 years before I found Galileo, and had pursued leadership at both previous camps and had worked as an assistant camp director. And so I was kind of ready at that point to not only stick with camp because I'd fallen in love, but also try my hand at being a camp director. And so when I moved to Los Angeles and found Galileo, I was really excited about the company, not only because of like their mission and their approach to education, but also from like the get-go, the way that they approached like inclusion and diversity was something that really resonated with me, and made me feel, I think, like competent as someone who could enter leadership. And I was really nervous starting the job just because I hadn't like been fully in charge by myself before. And I think initially the hardest thing that I dealt with was kind of balancing my time with campers versus my time with staff members. My first summer was really great and also really challenging. I failed a lot, and there were some staff members that did not feel supported by me at all. And so I think learning to listen to people share their feedback to me and recognize that like they weren't saying anything about Matt the human, but like just how I could be a more effective camp director kind of really helped shape the camp director that I am today. And also like learning that like my staff members were my campers, and so it was important to support my campers, but also recognize that like my role was a little bit different. And I think the best part about being a camp director is just the silliness. I love camp because I have found so much confidence in myself through being given a space where I can be silly. And the way that translates to campers and parents. So like I will come out and, you know, the mermaid tail I showed you earlier, and like roller skates and a red wig, and parents just like, you can tell they don't want to go to work. They're really tired. They've probably had a rough morning, but then just to see another grown adult like skating by, singing, you know, part of your world really blows their mind. And it also really makes campers feel safe and welcomed as well. And I think I've been really lucky being the camp director for the last 6 years to kind of build that community. And so this summer I have campers who I met when they were 4, and now they're all the way in middle school, which is wild. And I have parents who trust me and will ask me if there's anything that their campers can improve on, or share stories with me about how confident they are during the school year. And so that right there, being able to like build community through silliness, is probably my favorite part about being a Galilean. And yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Matt. And I definitely am going to double tap the impact of being able to see a camp community grow in your care year over year. I was at my site for many years, and getting to see those campers come in as nebulas and then become supernovas who want to grow up to work at camp is truly one of the most rewarding gifts that you can receive. So that's fantastic to have that legacy at your site, Matt. Thanks for sharing. All right, Tatiana, over to you.
Okay. So I can say what drew me to Galileo is just I'm an overall summer camp and after school program kid. I'm an only child, so I was always in after school programs, always in summer camps, and they just hold a special place in my heart because I felt like they built me into the woman that I am today. And I also had a lot of fun there and met a lot of friends. So that's just what drew me to Galileo. I would honestly say the go-karts. That's what made me apply. The kids were building go-karts, and I didn't even teach the go-kart curriculum, but I'm like, wow, I want to work there. They're building go-karts. This is cool. So that's honestly what drew me to the company, as well as their mission and just the great projects. As far as a camp director, my leadership team actually requested that I be a camp director. Like they were like, hey, did you ever think about being a camp director? It was something that never crossed my mind because I always had so much fun in the classroom with the kiddos, making the projects and things like that. And I just always wanted to be of assistance to my team in any way. I worked for Shay over the summer, and I actually just got thrown into her site, and I taught pretty much every grade level there. And camp was awesome, and I enjoyed that. And I guess once they saw that flexibility, they're like, hey, you know, maybe we should give it a try. And I gave it a try, and I felt so supported by everyone. Kind of to piggyback what everyone else said, they have a lot of support, the trainings, just the resources. If you ever need anything, you can just type it in and a Google Doc will pop up and you will have everything that you need. So I love the resources that they provide. And I can say that I was nervous about just taking over a camp that was led by Shay, because Shay was amazing and she had the standards so high. But once again, she built that community, and we had an awesome community of kids and families. And I felt like that's kind of what made my job easier as well, because she set that tone for them and they had high expectations, definitely. But it was awesome. And let's see. The best part about being a camp director and what made it worth it was the kids and their smiles, and also just the families. Like Matt said, when they see you in the morning and you're out there and the bubbles are gone and the music is going and we're just dancing, they're like, hey, we wish we could stay at camp too. So I would say just the themes, we would have pajama day, superhero day, and just having the kids involved in camp on top of them creating their projects that they're building on all week is just a very fun place, and you never want to go home after. It's always bittersweet when summer is over, for sure.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I think my personal bias in selecting this panel has definitely been revealed a little bit, because Tatiana absolutely is one of my all-time summer camp staff superstars. And if you're an alumni staff member who's in this call because somebody like your camp director or your assistant camp director has been whispering in your ear for years that they think you'd make an awesome camp director, you're here for a reason, and that's because folks at camp that know what Galileo leadership looks like have seen that in you, and think that you have that in you as well. So 2 out of 3 folks on this call started off in camp staff positions and made their way to the camp director role. So we hope that for a lot of you here that are, returning staff members, that can be your journey too. So thank you all so much again for sharing. Thank you for our panelists for taking the time in the non-camp season to come on and talk about camp. Again, these folks are not actively working as camp directors right now, but came from the goodness of their heart out of their, hibernation to come and chat about the role. So deep appreciation for all of you. Thank you so much. It's now time for our Q&A. And I did see a few questions come in the Q&A that I'll answer directly now. And then we have a few other questions that we received ahead of our session that we'll get to in a little bit. But if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in. So I see a question here: how would the locations work with in-person meetings and training sessions? So I'm understanding that question correctly. So you have your camp location that you'll be directing. That's the camp that you'll physically report to every day in the summer. But in the preseason, your sort of meetings and training sessions will happen largely remotely. There are only 2 times in the preseason that you're required to be in person. One is a January kickoff, and one is a retreat with your region in April. So outside of those 2 in-person weekends, all of your preseason time is spent digitally. Although if you do live locally, as most folks do, to their camp locations and to the other camp directors around them during the preseason, there's tons of opportunities for in-person co-working, in-person coffee meetings with your manager rather than Zoom calls. So it's sort of up to you in the preseason, how in person you'd like to go with some of that connection time. But the work is designed to be mostly asynchronous. And then you also have a weekly training that's going to take place in real time over Zoom, but you have the option between 2 different days and times to attend that training. So I hope that answers that question. And if it doesn't, and you're like, no, Shay, that's not what I was asking, feel free to type in a clarifying question. And I'll also name, as we go through these questions, when I send out this recording at the end of our time. There'll also be a link there to schedule a one-on-one call with me. So if you have more specific questions or you need more clarity on anything we're discussing today, you'll have the opportunity to schedule a time to connect with me as well to go through in more detail. But thank you for that question. I also see a question here. Are the resume suggestions rigid, or could one or two maybe be lacking, and could we make up for those with different qualities? So I'll say that sort of the big picture things we're looking for are K through 8 child experience. So we want to see that you've worked with kids. That, of course, is an essential requirement. The way that you've done that work could come in all different flavors, but we definitely want to see a good foundation of child experience across age groups. We also want to see that you've had some leadership experience. And again, leadership experience can look like different things. If you haven't had direct experience leading people in a managerial role, we'd really want to hear from you in your application and really see you highlight on your resume what other leadership experience you've had. So that could be things that you've done in or outside of school, maybe how you've led your colleagues or your peers in a work environment. Really, if you're not someone who manages people actively in your current role, have a little think on the ways that you provide leadership in other spaces, maybe in informal ways. And that's what we're really going to want to see and hear about on your resume. So big picture answer to your question, they're not super rigid. We're not looking to tick exact boxes, but we do want to see the childcare experience, the leadership experience, and of course, an ability to have strong operational organizational skills, strong communication skills, etc. But yes, sort of to Ramaya's point earlier, we really welcome all the different ways that those skills can manifest. And a real recommendation when you're applying is to look at the job description, look at each of those bullets, and be really intentional in your resume and name how you've done each of those things for us. And again, if you have questions about sort of how to navigate our application process, that's something that you can, connect with me about too, if you'd like some more insight there. But hopefully that was helpful. And then one more from me, and then we'll kick it over to some camp directors, but these are logistical about our process, so I'll take these. If you're not able to commit to the camp director role, are you able to apply for assistant camp director, and how does that process work? Excellent question. Yes, absolutely. If you're like, oh, I don't know if camp director life is going to fit my needs right now, but hey, camp leadership sounds really delightful and I'd love to give it a try, we would encourage you to still come through the camp director hiring process, unless you're like 100% sure that there's no way you could be a camp director. It is just a really good opportunity for us to get to know you early in the season. And in that process, we can think about all potential fits that might be good for you in our summer constellation. And then I would say, if you're somebody who falls into that second bucket where you're like, I definitely can't work starting in January, but I could maybe take on some preseason hours starting in the spring and definitely work full-time for camp. In that case, you're going to want to apply when our assistant camp director positions open in January. So our summer jobs, including our assistant camp director job, open in January. We do encourage you, particularly for assistant camp director positions, to apply as soon as possible when jobs apply, because there are only so many of those roles. Also, lots of camp alumni that are going to be returning to those roles that they've held in the past. So to really get a good shot at being considered and us having spaces for you, we encourage you to apply early. And then the assistant camp director interview process is sort of similar to our camp director run. We do an initial evaluation, and we'll do a screening. There might be a group interview component, and certainly there'll be a final interview where we dig in more deeply in similar ways that we do in the camp director role to really understand all the different facets of your experience. So hopefully that was helpful as well. And yeah, the assistant camp director role is a great training ground for camp director work, because you're the right-hand person of camp leadership, and you really get to see all of that in action. So that's a great option. It also could be that you're somebody who comes through our camp director hiring process, and we determine that actually the assistant camp director job might be a better fit. So there's also a world where you do that process with us now, and then we get to the end of that time and we give you a call and we say, hey, you know what? We'd really love to place you in an assistant camp director role this summer. And then we talk with you at that stage about what your options might be in terms of placement and that sort of thing. Cool. Great. Oh, one more question that I can answer. Sorry. And then we'll get back to camp directors. Well, those who applied through Indeed and submitted their application and resume, will we reach out with next steps and a more detailed resume. So the resume that you submit is the resume that you submit. So if you submitted a resume and then you were like, oh, gee, maybe I'd like to add some more details to that resume, we encourage you to email us at jobs@galileo-learning.com. Don't worry, this will be in the email you receive, so you don't have to write it down. If you email Jobs and you go, hey, Jobs, I applied for a job and submitted a resume, and now I'd like to actually use this one, then we can take that into consideration and swap it out. You don't need to apply again if you've already applied. But definitely when you're submitting your resume, take a few minutes to give it a quick review, check it against our job description, and make sure that it's a resume that you're really excited to submit. Again, we want to see that you've highlighted the skills that we're looking for in particular. And I know that it takes a little bit of time to go in and edit a resume to customize it for a job. But as somebody who looks at resumes all day, I can tell you, we love that. We love to see that you care about us and that you want to really highlight the skills that make you a great fit for this position. So it's definitely worth taking those few extra minutes to do that. Once you've applied, we'll reach out to you. Right now, our turnaround time is between 2 and 3 days for new applicants. When our season gets really busy, sometimes that can extend to a week, but typically we try and get back to you within 48 hours of your initial application and let you know. And that will either be a thank you so much, this is not a fit for this season, but here's when our summer jobs are posted, we'd love to see your application then, or a thank you so much, here's some information about next steps, which would be entering our video screening process. Great, I'm seeing a few more come in, but I'm also gonna kick it. I'm gonna see if I can kick any of these to somebody else so you can stop hearing my voice. So I see when you're applying to when you're applying for the camp director job, should you apply for assistant camp director alongside it? You cannot do that because assistant camp director jobs don't open until January. So if you're applying for a camp director job, that's currently the only camp job that is open, and then all of our other camp jobs open in January. And our application dates for January, I'm assuming is this question, are the application dates already set? So camp director applications are open now, so you can apply immediately after this call or at any point in the future. And our January job launch date, I think, is in the process of being solidified. And if you're in our email subscriber list, the exact date of that January job launch will be rolled out to you shortly. Okay, enough of me. We are going to take it to some of our camp directors here for a few other questions. So we have a question here. What if you haven't been a Galileo staffer before? What's it like? How should you apply? What's the journey? What can you expect? Matt, I'll kick it over to you for that.
So as you've heard, I came into Galileo with camp experience, but I had never heard of or worked at Galileo before, like some of our other camp directors. And so I went through the application process. I had a group interview. I had like a 2-on-1 interview, and then obviously was hired. And so I think a lot of it stems from like, well, how do I know how to run this program if I've never seen it before? And the purpose of our preseason work is learning about all aspects of camp. So you're going to get weekly trainings about what each aspect of camp looks like, and not only like what it looks like, but the processes that go behind it and how to work through them. You're going to have support from your direct manager. You're going to have support from other camp directors in your region, as well as the weekly trainings are with camp directors across our entire company. So there is a lot of support, and it can feel very overwhelming going into something you've not seen before. But I am a success story, and I promise you that we will give you all the tools to be successful.
Amazing. Thank you, Matt. Okay, here's another question. This one I'm going to kick over to Zainab. If I'm not super campy, can I still do the camp director role?
Absolutely. I think I don't identify as somebody who's super campy. I will say that. I'm more of like a quiet, I'm like an introverted or an extroverted introvert most of my life. And so camp or making things campy is all about you being you, and you bring out your unique personality that your camp community will latch on. I don't like to do like the big like dance and repeat after me like that. It's something that really pushed me out of my comfort zone this year. So I learned and I grew, but I also got to bring like the quiet joy and the fun little interactions with my campers. And you also get to toss things to your fellow staffers who are really excited about those things. I know I had a staff member on our first setup day be like, can I be in charge of skits? And I was like, yeah, great. Like, that's something that is off my plate. And they got to really shine in that role. And yeah, camp is what you make of it, and you are an amazing human. And so whatever you bring to camp is what makes it campy, and that's what's really special.
Yeah, and I think to double tap that, right? It's a really great way to visualize your work, right? You are sort of the leader and the facilitator of camp joy and camp magic, and all the different ways that that manifest is partially made real by the skills and experience and enthusiasm of your staff team, right? And if you're somebody who has a staff member who's really into skits and songs, like that might be something that really excites your campers and becomes a really significant part of your camp culture. Or maybe you have a staff member who's really into scavenger hunts and puns and making things really gamified across your camp, and that becomes a really part of your camp culture. At my camp, I had a lot of staff members who loved unicorns and a lot of staff members who loved dinosaurs, and we ended up having inflatable unicorn and dinosaur costumes become a really important part of our camp culture. We had a legacy of dinosaur unicorn dance-offs that happened annually. And that wasn't in my work plan, and that wasn't part of my camp vision, but these are the sorts of magical things that bubble up in combination with all of the incredible people that you're going to find yourself surrounded by. So it's you and it's the team of people that are supporting you that really make all of those magical moments possible. Okay, cool. I'm going to kick one more question over to Matt in just a second. But before I do, if you're listening and you have any lingering questions that haven't been answered yet, I encourage you to pop them in the chat, or in the Q&A box, I should say, as Matt is answering this next question. So Matt, my question for you here, and we sort of touched on this a little bit, but what if you're interested or what if someone is interested in the role, right, and they don't feel quite ready? We've heard my take, but what's your advice?
So I think, first of all, you know you best. I don't know you and what your experiences are. And so ultimately, I trust you all to make that decision for yourselves. But something I really try to remember that I've talked to my therapist about is that feelings are valid and they are not facts. And so I've started to really look at my emotions as muscles. And one of the mindsets that we talk about at camp and something that we practice, and I actively try to practice, is courageousness. And so I don't know that anybody feels quite ready. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I still get very nervous every summer, meeting my staff or meeting new campers and new parents. But I think ultimately, the way that we learn and the way that we grow is by taking those kinds of risks. And so I just want to reassure you that, as Shay mentioned earlier, we have been named one of the best workplaces for over 10 years now. We are one of the top hires in diversity, and we work really hard to make sure that you all feel supported. And so it feels very different to come into a company and have everyone be so encouraging. But if you decide to take that leap and practice courageousness, like I said, I do want to reassure you that you're going to have a lot of support to make sure that you have all the tools you need to be successful. And ultimately, you are a wonderful human that is going to be hired not because, of anything other than who you are. And so I really encourage you to, if you, are interested at all, to at least just apply, because the worst thing that's going to happen is we say it's not a good fit right now. And that could change in the future, or that could really propel you into whatever adventure you go.
Yeah. And I think what's key to remember, right, and to Matt's point about learning every year, we're an education organization. We teach children, we teach and coach our staff, we teach and coach our camp directors, and we teach and coach each other, right? And all of that happens in a learning by doing kind of way. And I think what's unique about Galileo, and what I personally feel is really special now working in an HQ context even, is that we really try and do what we say, right? We say we value learning, we value it in all directions. Leadership comes from everywhere at our organization, and we're always looking for ways to welcome folks in to our community rather than to keep folks out. So again, if you're not sure, come and be in conversation with us. Hopefully after this time with us, we seem like fun, nice people who you'd be excited to engage with in an interview process. So don't be scared, apply. And we're looking forward to opening up that dialogue with you. Alrighty. What is the age range of your camp directors and staff? Tatiana, I know you haven't answered any questions yet. I'm throwing this one to you. Obviously, you can tap into me if you want more global context, but I feel like you have a pretty good read on this. So why don't I give this one to you?
Okay, I can say that our staff, they range from 16 probably plus 16 plus. I'm not sure what our oldest staff member is, but we've had people who were in like their 50s and 60s, and they are very seasoned in education, and they come with all the tips and tricks, and the more experience the better. Also, the fresh young minds are great as well, because they have the new trends and things that some of us middle-aged folks might not be up to par on. So I can say that we have a wide variety of staff. And that's what makes it fun, because you can learn so much from so many different people.
Yeah, and I'll say that while typically I'd say our average starting age for camp directors specifically is going to be, I don't know. I mean, again, it sort of varies. The only requirement to be a camp director is that you're over 18 years of age and you have the experience that we're requesting, and you can evidence that for us in an interview. So there really isn't any firm requirement in terms of age. But yeah, to Tatiana's point, we have folks of all ages working for us at camp. Our summer interns are often folks that are maybe having their first ever job experience with us. Although I have also had summer interns who were in their 30s, and, you know, staff members everywhere in between, like Tatiana said. So yeah, it's sort of, if you can evidence to us that you have the skills that it takes and you're legally able to work with children, and for camp directors, if you're over 18, then you can work at camp. Great. Okay, so we have just a few precious minutes left. I'll kick it over to you, Maya.
All right, so just to wrap it all up, some of the next steps, we want you all to apply. If you do feel inspired by our mission, you're wanting to start that conversation with Galileo, now is the right time to apply. Our applications are open on Indeed, and you should all have received some information either through email or hopefully through this info session to get you on the right direction to starting that application to get to know you. And we'll redirect you from there if we have any additional ways that we can involve you in camp this upcoming summer. Back to you, Shay.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. So that's it. That brings us to the end of our time. So thanks for being here with us today. We deeply appreciate your interest in Galileo, and we look forward to receiving your applications and learning more about you soon.